Once again, at a Black Lives Matter protest, chaos has ensued. White people are screaming for mercy and being beat up in parking garages. Rocks are being thrown at cops and dropped from bridges onto the highway. Stores and trucks are being looted. A state of emergency has been declared, and the National Guard has been deployed. This keeps happening over and over and over again in Ferguson, in Milwaukee, and now here in Charlotte. Everywhere Black Lives Matter goes, hate, racism, and violence and destruction follows. And I guarantee, just like with every other time this happens, you will hear the mainstream media jump to say, we must differentiate the protesters from the rioters. And sure, go ahead, differentiate the protesters from the rioters, but people can no longer separate the rioters from Black Lives Matter. We cannot just acknowledge the peaceful aspects of BLM. It is not reasonable to ignore the racist statements made by leaders at these riots. It is not reasonable to ignore when white people are dragged out of cars and beat at their events. It's not reasonable to ignore when cops are killed. We cannot ignore the violence simply to support a positive narrative about the movement. Riots like Charlotte have never been an isolated incident. The violence and madness and terror follows Black Lives Matter everywhere they go. It cannot feasibly be the same 10 idiots going on a road trip across the country to make them look bad. This has happened in Ferguson, in Baltimore, in Salt Lake City, Dallas, Milwaukee, Detroit, and now Charlotte. It's not a coincidence cities are burnt to the ground following BLM appearances or speeches by D-Ray, Al Sharpton, or Obama. The reality is it was never rioters co-opting Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has always been a violent, hateful movement at heart. You don't see this happen to other protest groups. You'll see Greenpeace gatherings, PETA gatherings, and slut walks. And none of these events do you see a sliver of the violence, hate, and racism and destruction seen at BLM protests. Like Black Lives Matter, many of these protest movements are sorely confused about the facts behind their cause. But feminists don't burn down cities, even though they seem to be religiously convinced that we live in a culture that actively promotes rape. And Greenpeace is protesting what they believe to be the freaking apocalypse, and even they aren't dragging petroleum users out of cars and beating them. So go ahead and separate rioters from protesters, but when it comes to Black Lives Matter events, both of them fall under the same movement and both of them show up to support the same thing. And it's no surprise that the riots follow the protests as thunder follows lightning. In many of these cases, the rioters and protesters support the exact same thing, but only some are willing to act. Peaceful demonstrators may not be shooting cops, but you sure as hell see them holding oink oink bang bang signs. You sure as hell hear them chanting in the streets for dead cops. So why are we surprised when we get burnt down cities? Why are we surprised when we get dead cops, beat up whites, and destroyed racial tensions when the leaders of these movements ask for exactly this? We shouldn't be, and we should no longer hold Black Lives Matter to a different standard than everyone else. If there was mass violence at every single Tea Party event, I guarantee you the media and the people would not have it. Everyone would be disgusted by the Tea Party. Yet Black Lives Matter is given a pass. We do everything we can to separate the violence from them. No more. Black Lives Matter needs to be called out for what it has shown itself to be time and time again, as it has shown us once again to be in Charlotte. It is a racist, violent, supremacist movement. Thanks for watching. Don't miss my show Standoff by clicking here to become a member.